Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I am thrilled to be hosting the biggest podcast conversation I've ever had yet, in that there are more people than I've ever had at one time. And I'm thrilled for it to be these particular healthcare humans, because though I personally know one of them much better than the other two, I'm excited to know the other two better. And I feel like I know you all a little bit through reading your book, and I'm so excited to get to know you more in this conversation. So I'd love if we started by each of you introducing yourself. So I'm going to go alphabetical first name. And Elizabeth, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. There are parts of me that we're not expecting to be first.
Oh,
But
yes.
yeah, that's okay. I'm Elizabeth Parsons, and I'm in Ottawa, Ontario, and I'm a family doctor by training. I trained in the 90s, and I went to University of Ottawa and to the Northeastern Ontario Family Medicine program, which was fairly new at the time. And I actually focused my practice quite early in my career. So I've been doing psychotherapy for the last 20 years, and currently my practice focuses on groups, so group therapy, and I have a few individual patients, and I also do some consulting for IFS therapists. And I'm married. I have 3 kids, young adults, and we have a cat. And I love knitting and gardening and reading. So a little bit about me.
Well, lovely to meet you, Elizabeth. Risa, you're next.
I was just like, wait a minute, who's next in alphabetical order?
I did have to think about it because there's 2 R names.
Yeah. So my name is Risa Adams, and it's lovely to be here with you, Joan. I live, like you, near Guelph, Ontario, and I'm also a family physician by training, and went to Dalhousie University and McMaster. My practice became focused in psychotherapy about 8 years ago, looking at working with the perinatal population, prenatal anxiety, because I had a lot of experience myself in that realm, and it felt important to, I had a part who's like, someone's got to talk about this. So I started a focused practice in that, and it's evolved over time as I've become more and more involved in IFS and teaching IFS. So I'm a trainer with the IFS Institute, and so my practice has evolved more into a long-term CPTSD, complex PTSD practice. I also have 2 children. I have 2 cats, and almost all of us love playing basketball. I'd say all of us, except for the cats, don't get to play basketball, but the rest of the family is very big in basketball. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Fall. And Robin.
Yeah, hi. It's not very often I go last with the name with Beardsley, but
True.
so it's interesting. Um, Hi, I'm Robin Beardsley, and I too was trained in medicine, but I went into family medicine, and I did primary care medicine for almost 30 years. And yeah, it's interesting. I trained in the 80s and then came to Ottawa. I went to Toronto, came to Ottawa, and then probably 2018, I did full-time psychotherapy. I transferred over. I'd always been doing about 10% with my own clients, and switched over because I burnt out doing primary care. But also stayed in primary care because it felt like seeing the whole person was important. So I did stay in family practice probably longer than maybe I should have, but anyhow. And Yeah, so now I do individual psychotherapy, mostly with care for caregivers. So a lot of my practice now is with other healthcare providers. And I run some balance groups, which talks about the doctor-patient relationship. I also teach mindful self-compassion. And I have two adult children and I'm married, and we have one cat. And like Elizabeth, I do some knitting and gardening, and recently joined the choir, which has been so lovely to get back in touch with singing. So, yeah.
Yes. The cat connections are strong in this group.
Yes.
I regret to inform you all that I only own a bird, and I feel like
Oh, that
this
does
is
not
like
mix.
a Tweety Sylvester situation, right? Like, uh-oh,
Gang
our
up.
pets cannot meet. But that's okay. The bird comes from my husband's side of the family. Really, I just am otherwise a no pet, but I appreciate other people's pets. So love that you all have that in common. So actually, Robin, you just touched about a bit about one of what I'm imagining was a motivation for the book that you've all co-written together and published, and is the real reason why we're here today is to chat about it, which was your experience of burning out, right? And your book so beautifully titled, like, It Doesn't Have to Be This Way. If I'd smart, it's at my office actually, so I can share it with like learners. So otherwise, my
Mm.
copy, I wish I had it here to show. Does anyone have one? Just to like show it. Look, yay! Look, you guys, first of all, you all wrote a book. Look at that.
Yes.
I don't know if you know Stephen Sondheim musicals, but like you made a hat where there never was a hat. Like I just think that's such a cool thing. And the idea that you've taken what you practice professionally, but want to offer it to yourselves and other physicians, I think is so beautiful. And I deeply connect to it, obviously, with the work I do as well. And I'd love to hear uh, a little bit from each of you about, you know, what comes to mind for you when you think about that title of like, it doesn't have to be this way. And like, what felt like a piece of the message that you really hope that this book would convey to your colleagues in saying it doesn't have to be this way. And maybe I will actually go backwards. So Robin, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you
Sure.
first, and then we'll kind of circle back around.
Yeah. Um, so this actually ties into some of the story that I write about what led me to change in my career. Um, it was somebody outside of medicine. I was doing a volunteer project and really overstretched. And one of the people in the volunteer project said, it doesn't have to be this way. Sorry, we've got construction going here, so it's moving my camera. Um, so I'll pause. And I actually never thought of that. I was thinking of stopping something outside that I was doing that was on my plate. And they said, yeah, it doesn't have to be this way. It's volunteer. Like, you can leave. And it just was so like, what? I could say no. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, is that I wasn't very good at saying no. And I believe, as I work with a lot of physicians, that this is one of the hardest things. And so it was like, we matter. So our voice matters. And I guess that's, I'll just leave it at that for now, but I have lots more to say around that. But it really felt important. This title, just, it never occurred to me that it could be any other way.
There is so much in that, because I think sometimes explicitly, but also just sort of culturally, it can be like there is only one way, and there's a right and a wrong way to be a human and to be a physician. So yeah, that
Yes.
resonates with me for sure. Thank you, Robin. How about you, Risa?
Hmm. Um, I'm resonating with there's just so much that could be said about it. So
Absolutely. Yes.
trying to hone in. And actually, this wasn't in the book, but hearing you, Robin, talk about someone say it doesn't have to be this way, brings to mind a similar moment where I was really struggling in family medicine residency and talking to a colleague who is in medicine. And she said, you don't have to do this. And I was like, "What?
Rude.
I don't?"
Yeah.
It was a real shock, but it opened something up, and I still wanted to do it. I still very much wanted to do it, and my path ahead ended up being long and windy until I really did anything significantly different, but it did kinda wake up to this, there is more choice than I realized, and, what I love about what we call IFS, internal family systems, is it's just a constant discovery of having more choice than you thought that you did, and finding more of that space, kinda opening up that, "Oh, it doesn't like, this isn't just how it is with, like, no other possibility." There's ways to access more, and so I have a lot of hope for people as individuals, and then also on a much bigger scale for within medical culture, within medical education, within medical practice, just all the there's it really doesn't have to be this way. We can keep the wonderful, magical, powerful, efficacious aspects, and we can change a whole hell of a lot else. So.
Beautiful. Thank you, Risa. And how about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to both of you. I can feel like there's a lot of I would have called it nervousness before I really got to know my part through IFS, but it's more this sense of like energy that this is really important. Like this is really meaningful. And so it's like my system is saying, oh, like, pay attention to this. That for me, I always had this sense that this doesn't have to be this way, like back in medical training, in medical school. And but I also didn't feel like I could do anything about it. It's like this is wrong, like not everything, I want to stress that, but events that happened and realize like no, this not right, like this shouldn't happen. But a sense of like I can't do anything about it, but having some kind of hope that something would happen, maybe in my life or somebody would do something about it. So I feel like for me, this book has really symbolized that wish to change, and I'm very hopeful. I think we all are very hopeful that it will change things in some way, even if it's just a beginning. But yeah, for me, it just feels like really essential to who I am, wanting to make a change, but not believing that I ever could. And certainly the fact that the three of us have done it together has really given me more hope because me alone, I could not have written this book alone. So really this sense of like, we have to do this together.
Yes. Oh man, I have multiple threads of conversation I could go on. So I'm just noticing the different directions that I suppose my parts could draw me. But I think I'm going to start with parts because one thing I will say, I'm obsessed with people who are into IFS. And I can't say I've done the deep dive, but Risa and I, for those listening, are the one we've had the most conversations because we're friends first. And whenever you talk about yourself as your parts, and in this conversation, how you each have, I just think it's such a wonderful way to speak about the experience you're having, and even like paradigm wise, like it doesn't have to be this way in terms of how I was taught and socialized to think about myself as a person, and that there's sort of layers of it and uncovering. So first of all, at first I thought of myself as just the person that had to make everyone happy, etc. And that things weren't optional, and even just that like reality was what other people told me it was, and an early revelation through sort of CBT type things of like your thoughts can inform your experience. Perhaps if you change your thoughts, notice that your thoughts are connected. Like that whole level of shifting your perception of reality and yourself was very helpful. But I have to say, another huge paradigm shift for me has been as I've considered that I am not necessarily one uniform person. I don't have to think of myself that way. And certainly every flavor of emotion or action I take, often a huge shame story that we're given and that we give ourselves is like, that means I'm bad. If it was a bad action, that means I'm bad. But that's not who I am. And like, thinking that we have to, like all of us has to be this uniform thing. versus perhaps we contain multitudes, you know? And so I would love to hear what IFS has helped shift for you. Again, that's the whole book. So obviously we're not going to get to all of the ways it has, but maybe like an early discovery, like when you were first discovering IFF, what was sort of some of those like aha moments of how IFS helped you shift your perception of yourself, period, or in particular, perhaps a story that you'd been holding as a physician, a should or a sticky story that looking at it through the lens of IFS had opened something up. And for this one, I'll let you like think, and then maybe like anyone who wants to share can share.
I don't have it fully formed, but I got something.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you're welcome though.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, what comes to mind in terms of the earlier days and was what made a tremendous difference for me. It did a lot in my professional life and in my parenting, but what comes to mind is in my relationship. And I, um, people might relate to this, whether it's with IFS or some other thing. When you find something, it's like, oh, this is great. Like, you've got to do this, or like, this applies to everything. I've had a very long, enthusiastic period in my life that continues, with a little bit more measured now. But um, essentially, I was like, to my partner, my husband, like, you need to do IFS. Like you need to do this. You need to change. You need to work with your parts. You. Like, and
Very relatable. Just to say.
I figured it might be relatable.
Yeah.
If only you would change, I could be so happy. I could be so happy. Everything would be so good. That was quite a long period of my life, I will admit. But what changed in having a shared session of IFS essentially was what we call a U-turn, which is like, so if there's something intense, there's something in it for you. We say, so even if we're really focused on something else, let's turn inside and see what's happening inside. And there was something about realizing, oh, there's a part of me who believes I need him to be different, to be okay, to actually meet the needs underneath there of a little part of me who really was so desperate for love and care and affection and to feel, and so just to open up that belief system that felt so true, like that felt like the way it was and the only way. But when I realized it wasn't like that just really shifted things.
Wow. That it was the intensity of the belief was being held by a part of you. And you could sort of say we don't have to continue to think that's the only story we could tell here, where we're waiting for the other person to change.
Yes, and just because this happens to be a happy ending. They aren't all happy endings, but I was blended with that part. So that part was driving the bus. That part thought it was me. I thought I was that part. We were one and the same. When I unblended and had some space and realized that was a part of me and there was more of me. So more of me, which we call self energy, that has compassion, curiosity, calm, creativity. I unblended and was no longer leading from that place of you need to change. And I'm sure you can feel that energy, right? That part has you need to change. You are not okay. So when I stopped leading from that place, lo and behold, wow, things have shifted. Not from some active him going to therapy and fixing himself place, but the dynamic shifted. So that's why I have a lot of hope. Even if things on the outside don't change, with relationships, patients, systems, there's so much that can change when we shift things inside of ourselves, how we relate to it, that actually does change. It actually interacts with the systems we're a part of.
Yes. And from a well that's actually plentiful because it's from your creativity, from your compassion, from the parts of you that are the most, I don't know if you'd say the most to you, but like I'll speak for myself. Like when I am acting from creativity, compassion, like I'm acting from that self energy, it's quite a renewable resource, and doing it in a pace that actually affirms and is kind towards me, and the impact is measurable as well. but I'm not doing from a place of like, I have to fix this whole system, or I have to fix this patient in front of me, and the husband for sure. I'm on my journey. This was well-timed conversation, Risa. But like, the more I release that, it's just beautiful how then actually, ironically, you give up the thing you think you need, and actually then it's more likely to come into your life, but in a different way. I think that's a beautiful illustration of IFS. Thank you, Risa. How about you, Elizabeth? You had something you wanted to
Mhm.
share?
Yeah, I love that example, Risa. And I noticed I had parts coming up around like, oh, what about this example or that example? Um, and I think what stands out for me right now is the shift that happened for me a few years ago around shoulds, like beliefs that I should do this, I should help that person, I should say yes, I should take on that task. Um, and and I can't say exactly like it wasn't a particular moment, but it was gradually realizing that I didn't have to do that. There was a moment where my therapist said to me, "You do know that you can change your mind, right? You have the right to to change your mind." And that feels like, that was a real light bulb moment for some of my parts, like, "Oh," and I probably heard that before or knew that on some level, but it was like it somehow went in. And so I was able to start to make changes because I did have more clarity on what I wanted to do, like, and started getting curious about like, what am I drawn to? And that's mostly how I operate now. Like, I try to notice when that should comes up and pause and say, do I really want to do that thing? Do I really want to take that on? So that's been a big change. And another one that's been like over time has been around safety and fear in my own system around other people, just people in general, just interacting with people. And so it feels like there's many parts of me that are around safety and finding safety. So having done all the things to kind of please other people, that keeps me safe, but it's not really what I really, really want to do. Right. So recognizing that and changing my relationship inwardly. And I totally agree with that. Outward relationships changing, not because the other person is changing, but because, my perspective is changing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. And I know I'm not alone in the people pleasing element of is a
Hmm.
very common strategy for safety that I hold for sure. And then probably because of that, a lot of people who listen have really resonated with that. So thanks for sharing that example. How about you, Robin? I saw you scribbling some notes there.
Yeah, yeah, there's just so many things. But I think the biggest thing that I'm actually noticing just recently is I have a part that really wants to make things better for others. And that uh, it's almost really painful to be around others who suffer, which makes sense why I would come into this field. Um, but I would have a very big judge, and so I would blame myself if what I was doing wasn't helping. And that judge has lessened. I've had more self-compassion, but I also realize how much that judge was trying to help me on my, I would say, kind of mission in life to be here to help others. So I've understood it a bit more. What I really notice now is I still want to make things better for others, but I don't take it so personally. I kind of take it in and notice the parts of me that are hurting. So that's just let me pause a moment because it really feels big to some of my parts and the sadness that they hold. Um, and so there's something around really trying to work hard. If I just do this, if I just love enough, if I just give enough, if I just do this, things will be better. And it's not always like that. Even if I say the right thing, even if I so I think that's been the hardest thing for me to understand is that even if we do the right thing, because I resonated with everything that everyone's here saying, but those shoulds, right? Even if I do the right thing, it doesn't necessarily mean things will work out the right way. So I've noticed, and I was just mentioning this recently, that when people are arguing, I used to get in the middle and try and make it better, and or I would try and go the extra mile. That I'm not sure it was necessarily people pleasing, but it was really like, oh, I can help. I'll step in. I can help. So really that caregiving, taking care of others has been my biggest takeaway. And now what I notice is I'm more willing to sit with it and be in that painful place and kind of hold me while I'm holding others. And so there's this, it used to be either or. I would either be able to take care of me or I'd be able to take care of others, but I couldn't do it at the same time. And so that's, yeah, just even right now. So, yeah.
Powerful and super, just like really potent themes for what I think a lot of folks, period, and folks in healthcare certainly would resonate with. I also think a beautiful thing that IFS language offers is a way to still express what's happening to you, but in a slightly less identified way, which also can make it easier for the other person to hear it. And what's coming to me is I'm picturing three physicians writing a book together, and three physicians who are GP psychotherapists who have the IFS lexicon, and just knowing from personal experience that it can be challenge group projects. They're not everyone's favorite, um, and I think many who go into medical school might identify with being the person who just takes over the group project in undergrad because you're like, I'm the one who needs the mark, or maybe that's just me. But and then I'm picturing, so like I would love to hear really how it went collaborating on this book, because I think we are in desperate need of like real world examples of how to collaborate in like a generative, affirming way. Because though there are many places where we do operate in like team-based care, I think the models we've been given aren't always the strongest and can sort of fall back on maybe like hierarchy or things that don't allow us to have our full humanity. And one of my hypotheses of how we like actually create a sustainable version of healthcare is to do way more sharing and collaborating, like in the clinical sense. So obviously this was not directly clinical, though absolutely therapeutic. This book is absolutely therapeutic. But I would love to hear, what was the process like writing this book together? Were there moments that were kind of tricky, or, like how did it go? Maybe I'll ask Risa first, because again, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, I would say at least 90% of the time, I think this would be surprising to people because we do get asked a lot, like, what was that like? Or how did you do that? Or, who wrote what? And at least 90% of the time, in my experience, it flowed really beautifully. It was like weaving. And, we had a process where we started by writing in a free flowing kind of way from a prompt where we would write for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and then have the opportunity to share if we wanted to speak out loud what we had written. So, share our vulnerability. And that was so connecting. Um, and over time came up with a structure, a format, a vision, sharing out, okay, you're maybe drawn to this piece, I'm drawn to this piece, do the rough draft, and then like having this document with comments and like a process of, you're not going to change something that you didn't write. Sometimes we couldn't remember near the end who wrote what. But
Cool.
comments, and like, so, to approve changes and just really collaborative and careful. And we did have some tricky, difficult moments that were really, really hard and vulnerable. And I'm curious if, I'm wondering, Elizabeth, if you want to say something about
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'll just start by saying that for me, I think the process that we went through, like 5 years almost, we were working on this book. And in the early, like what couple of years, we were writing for ourselves. So like Risa said, we would write from a prompt and then we would share. And so looking back at that, it was that trust that we built over time. So we really trusted and respected each other. So that, I think that was a key piece. And then having said that, of course, I think we all had experiences of blending with parts, as Risa, said. And I'll speak for one part of me that is a very like rules-based grammar part that would come out sometimes pretty strongly. So that sometimes caused a little bit of tension. And so it did really help to be able to, just like we say in the book, the pause, breathe, notice, right? To pause, take a breath, all three of us, okay, and notice, what parts are here and be able to speak for them and, and that way communicate with each other in a more kind of compassionate, open way. So then we could fix the grammar, says my grammar part, or whatever it was, but that we could really listen to each other. And there were moments too where we decided, this is a really important thing for you. We're going to keep that in the book, even if somebody else is maybe wanting to change it a bit. This is really important. So we each respected that as well for each other. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Robin, did you have something there too?
Yeah, absolutely. I can resonate with all of that, where there were times where it would feel like it was really flowing. And then what I really appreciated was if something came up, and Elizabeth said, because we'd done so much work together, I think there was this trust that had built up in doing the writing and listen and being vulnerable with each other, and that it was a safe place to be vulnerable. And while difficult, it what I noticed from the two my two co-authors is they would say, "Well, take a moment, pause, do a U-turn." That reminder to actually do what we talked about, and I appreciated that because I would say I'm probably not alone in this. When you're blended, you often don't know it. And and you just think you're right, and you just think this is the way it is because that's, as Risa said, who's driving the bus in that moment. And so appreciating, I'll just speak of one part that felt really blended when we were doing some of the editing, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen some of the editing. It's like I reject or I approve, right? And so those words
Tough.
got me into my, oh, they don't like what I wrote, or that part would get blended, and it wasn't that at all. It was, we want to write it this way, and it would, in the end, it made sense to write it that way. So I would say we have different styles, and yet as we came together as one voice, and as we were going along, I just really appreciate it. As Risa said, sometimes I didn't know who wrote this, right? So, so I think we lived the model in terms of pausing and taking time out and just, let's not write in this moment, let's be. So that, I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Just the pearls I'm hearing from that I think can apply to anything. But one of my favorite expressions is move at the speed of trust. It's an Adrienne Marie Brown quote, which I'm obsessed with her. I just quote her all the time. And so speaking of that, 5 years, tons of space and pace to build the foundational relationship with one another. And that then allowed you to have the more candor-filled conversations or moments of mismatch expectation, conflict kind of stuff. And reflecting on the healthcare system and how, move at the speed of trust is not a foundational value of our current healthcare system, tragically, right? And urgency of all kinds permeates through. I'm just reflecting on the contrast there. And one thing that brings to mind is how often, even now, I can still feel quite, maybe intimidated, or other physicians in particular, I'm going to call us out as the docs, they can feel kind of scary. And I'm curious how you found, so I think for most, if not all of you physicians, or at least one of your client focuses, or at least certainly when you're writing this book, you were writing it thinking of your peers in mind. How has IFS shifted the way that you interact with your peers, or has it made it easier to interact with peers, even perhaps those that are I guess, I don't know if you do assume other people's experience, but you might have a hypothesis they're very blended with specific parts, Has IFS helped you in that way? Because sometimes I feel like I'm walking into a, shark-infested waters with some docs, and I know that it's because of the stories they're telling themselves, but it still can be tricky. So I wonder if there's advice to be gleaned from the IFS perspective on that.
Yeah, I can say something about that. I don't know if it's advice, but so Robin and I teach psychotherapy to physicians who are interested in doing more psychotherapy in their practices. And I remember maybe it was 4 years ago when I started doing that, really being afraid of teaching. And it was online, and it was 25, 30 physicians. Um, and I remember really feeling like worried about judgment and sort of, challenges from the participants. And having taught that a couple of times a year for the last 4 years, I have really noticed a shift. And I think some of that is around being able to see, and again, yeah, it is a hypothesis, but I'm sensing the parts that are in somebody. So if they're being challenging, I'm curious about, what else is going on for them. Maybe they've got parts that are scared about something that's happening with a patient of theirs, or something in their training that's coming up for them. And so I can just be a lot more curious about their experience.
Mm, lovely. Would you agree,
Mm.
Robin, having done
Yeah,
similar
yeah.
work?
Yes, that curiosity is probably what I lean to quite quickly in terms of coming into self energy. It's like, oh, what's going on there? How come that's happening? And curiosity, if we come to curiosity, it reduces it that it's a threat, right? As soon as we see it as, what's going on, and it's not necessarily that they're threatening me. Um, and I would also say that that whole thing of it's a part of them or they have parts has been, we say this thing of updating our own system. So a lot of I would say my young ones that tried to rule or thought they had to, or had beliefs that they had around the world, is and how to be is that letting them know this is just a part of them. This is who they are in this moment. This is what we're seeing in this moment, and being able to kind of stand back, but also, trying to hold that, can I trust this person? Am I safe in this moment? So it's a both and, right? You can't just say, okay, that's a part of them. And like, so one of the things that we talk about is, all parts are welcome, but not all behavior. And so that has helped a lot in terms of, I, maybe speaking for that behavior that's coming out right now rather than the person. So
Mm,
that's
I
been
just love all
helpful.
the sayings in IFS too. I'm writing that one down. That's good. You as a full human being are welcome here, but not every action is welcome here. That's
Yeah,
just
because
got wisdom.
sometimes people say, you mean I have to sit there and take it?
Right.
Right? And that's that fierce compassion that can come forward.
Mm,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Lovely. Risa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just expand on that and bring back the U-turn again as that powerful tool. So, Joan, if we ever met again, I'd a part who's like, I wonder if Joan would want to do a mini session sometime or something.
Oh, I mean, I definitely say yes. I love this stuff.
Because what we would do, and like what we offer as an exercise in the book is, and anyone can do this, is if you picture one of those situations. So, and we're not going to do this right now because we don't have time, Joan, but you would imagine, like, when you walk into that room of sharks, like you imagine or having a conversation with a physician, a colleague, and what they say, what they do, the kind of energy you feel, you imagine, and then you do the U-turn. Okay, and then what's happening for me? What happens for me when this person does or says this thing? And what that does is, again, it leads us to who inside of us, what parts of us struggle, what gets activated in us, what vulnerability comes up, what fear, what protective responses. And because as we come into relationship with ourselves and are able to more quickly notice, oh, okay, yes, it allows us to regain that space. And what Robin was just saying, the possibility of speaking to what needs to be spoken to from what we call a self-led place, that's more likely to be heard, more likely to be received, because that person isn't only that part they're blended with. They do have their own self energy, and they're more likely to hear yourself than they are another protective part of you who's just going to up the ante.
Mm. Oh, so good. I knew that our time allotted was not going to be enough. So obviously we like truly just scratched the surface, but being respectful of time constraints, I know we got to wrap it up. So the last question I like to ask on the podcast that feels really great here is like, picturing those that are listening in. We have folks in healthcare. Some actually not in healthcare, but like the vast majority are folks in healthcare, all different professions within that, in different parts of the world even. And I think that those that listen regularly are drawn to this desire to feel more human is the language that I use. I wonder if it would be sort of connect back to self energy, and perhaps even I feel more human when I can hold love and compassion and understanding for all parts of my humanity, which is all of the parts, right? No bad parts. So that's what brings them here. And like, how can you do that? How can you practically do that when the system as it's set up doesn't recognize our full humanity? I don't think that's even a non-controversial statement. I just think we're not there yet. So any words of, I'd love to hear from each of you, a couple words of encouragement, advice. Again, not the ultimate magical words that fix everything, but what's coming to you now, thinking of folks in healthcare now who are struggling to stay connected to their full humanity. What would you want to offer to them? And we'll do alphabetical last name to close this out. So Risa, would you like to go first?
Well, I'll keep it short, which is I offer the message for you to hold, to take in, to see if it's something that you can feel in yourself, and it's something that you could just say or remember, which is, I matter. I matter. And even a few seconds of that, a little microdose in the middle of something really hard, that's what we call self energy, and it can make a difference.
Powerful. Thank you. How about you, Robin?
Yeah, two things. Thanks, Risa. Uh, just in doing the self-compassion practices too is for me like bringing a hand to my heart or someplace is reminding me that I'm here because I tend to forget about me. Um, so reminding that I'm here, and as Risa says, I matter. I also just this might be an advice part maybe, but find your people because having someone that you can be with uh, in your humanness while doing this job, that helped me all the way through.
So I'm going to combine what both of you said. For me, the starting small and knowing that it doesn't have to make a huge difference to matter. And so wherever you feel like you can start, like Pema Chodron says, start where you are and just see what happens. And connection is the big one for me too, is connect with others. And whoever that might be, it might be your colleagues, but it might be other people, that you just feel supported by. And yeah, I think we need each other. We can't do this alone.
Wonderful. All right. Those of you, I can't remember if you had your book on you, but I know Robin and Risa did. So,
Yes.
do you all three? Yes. Okay. Hold up your books. Look at this beautiful thing you co-created. I just think the fact that it was co-created, I just find that just is so evocative to me. Like, yes, it's the future we need. So, congratulations on writing and publishing a book. I'll be sure to include a link to how people can access it. For those that want to. I imagine it has its own website, right? Yes. Okay. So that's what I'll put in the show notes. So if folks want to go and interact with it and purchase it, then they can. And just thank you all so much for your time here today. I'm not kidding. I love talking to people who can talk in parts. Like this is the most like grounding, generative conversation I've had in a while. So I appreciate all of you bringing your wonderful selves to this conversation.
Thank you, Joan.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you for facilitating.
So much,
Sure.
Yeah,
All
it's been
right.
wonderful.
Good. All right. So those listening, yeah, please take in the beautiful words that have been shared with you about how you matter and connection and finding your people. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye. I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.